This podcast is part of the Blueberry Network. Blueberry.com is where listeners and podcasters come together. Check it out at blueberrywithnoease.com.
So the Earbud U podcast, while fun to put together, doesn't run for free. And while we're happy to be a new member of the Blueberry Network, we'd like you, our faithful listeners, to do something for us. If you're thinking about engaging with podcasting either now or in the future, and you're stuck on a hosting company, Blueberry is for you. Look, there are a lot of podcast distribution companies out there that are going to make you a lot of promises. But Blueberry offers 3 things that made it my go-to when starting the Earbud U podcast. Number 1, convenience. With the PowerPress plugin and WordPress integration, it works with around 90% of all websites out there. Number 2, optimization. Yeah, it took me a while to accept that Apple and iTunes pretty much rule the roost when it comes to podcast distribution. But after I came to that realization, Blueberry was great at making everything very, very easy. Number 3, publishing and distribution is simple. Look, I have a lot of stuff going on in my life. I design corporate trainings, I give speeches, I write blog posts, and occasionally I get to see Mrs. Earbud U and the kids. But with Blueberry, publishing my podcast was done and over in 3 easy steps. No muss, no fuss, no bother. Look, head on over to blueberry.com, no ease, and type in the promo code earbud_u, and they'll give you a month of hosting service for free on me. You can't beat that deal with a stick. That's blueberry.com, no ease, and type in the promo code earbud_u. And now, on with the show. The real trouble with mediation, as a matter of fact, the real trouble with all forms of conflict resolution or alternative dispute resolution, if you will, is their intersection with capitalism. But our guest today has a way around that by using collaboration, mentorship, and by tapping in to an animated adherence to the core principles of mediation while not sacrificing ethics or her own personal value or the value of her organization. Welcome to the show. This is Earbud U Season 3, Episode number 5. As a field, we need a larger fulcrum. Championing peace at the earliest stages is the hard work. Now, the hard work comes because peace builders must persuade, convince, and sell to a skeptical, conflict-comfortable public. Marketing and business development, mentoring and networking, and training beyond just the academy will grow the field organically over the next few years, and this is the best thing that we can do for the field. But there's one area that mediators, and really all peace builders, struggle in mightily, and that's the area of getting the ask. We'll have more about this, but first, a word from our sponsor, me. When you're talking about business development for the peace builder, things can get tricky for you as a peace builder if you can't define your unique value. In my new book, Marketing for Peace Builders, How to Market Your Value to a World in Conflict, I lay it all on the line for you. I tell you everything I've done to grow my business, including how I found out what the value of my skills as a peace builder were to my market, and how to value them against the market. This is not easy, I won't lie to you, but it is worthwhile, just like making peace is worthwhile to a world in conflict. Order your copy today and get a handle on advocating for your value right now. Look, visit Amazon.com today and type in Marketing for Peace Builders. The book is only $26.99, and you won't have to pay for shipping if you order it using your Amazon Prime account. And while you're there, leave a review and follow my author page. There's links to my blog, links to the Earbud U podcast, and there's even links to the LinkedIn group for this book as well. Finally, once you've received your copy in the mail, tear that package open, take a picture with you in the book, and tag all your friends and associates and me at Human Services Consulting and Training on Facebook and show them that you're committed to developing as a peace builder today. Look, you're helping me, I'll be honest. You're helping my kids, and you're helping your world as well. And thanks. In order to sell peace building, the peace builder themselves must become a champion of peace, like I said before. This requires a changing in the thinking of the peace builder around the sales process. The second step after marketing then becomes not the ask, which a lot of peace builders and mediators get caught up in, but the process of building a fulcrum, like I said before, that demonstrates value, and then leveraging that value to grow the revenues of relationship, trust, and money. Now, this building of a fulcrum comes from his idea. It comes from Seth Godin's idea in his great book, Free Prize Inside, around becoming a champion of peace and deciding that, becoming the free prize for clients goes merely beyond just the revenues, like I said before, of relationship, trust, and money. So you may be thinking, okay, what are some practical ways to do this, Jesan? Because building a fulcrum and becoming a champion, these all sound like fancy words, but I don't really know what this means in my practice. Well, there are 3 practical steps in building a sales fulcrum. Number 1, determine if the customer you're selling to as a peace builder thinks the work of building peace is worth doing. Number 2, determine if the customer you're selling to as a peace builder thinks that you're the person, as the peace builder and the mediator, to build that peace. And then number 3, determine if the customer you're selling to as a peace builder believes that the outcomes of the work of building peace are actually an added benefit to them, their organization, or if you're in a family mediation situation, their lives. By definition, all of these practical steps are hard for the peace builder to really answer definitively at the beginning of the sales process because they are based in assumptions, ideas, and a worldview that is inherently unprovable, unknowable, and unquantifiable until after the work of building peace is already in progress or already completed. But our guest today, Ann Sawyer of the Southern California Mediation Association, has a plan for helping mediators build fulcrums. And she'll talk about laying the first steps towards this with the help of the Southern California Mediation Association and their great collection of tools and resources for mediators, not just in Southern California, but also all over the country. All right. Well, that's it. Let's get into it. Welcome to Earbud U, Season 3, Episode Number 5. Get your knowledge on through your earbuds. Our special guest for our show today is Ann Sawyer. Now, Ann serves as the Executive Director of the Southern California Mediation Association, a nonprofit association dedicated to mediators and mediation education in the Southern California area. Ann is a private mediator and conflict resolution consultant as well. She assists mediators with their business practice design and marketing, as well as administering and convening all types of disputes for mediations and all the way through to arbitrations. Now, prior to her work with the SCMA, Ann was in the legal field for about 25 years as a certified paralegal and a law firm administrator working in civil litigation, labor and employment, corporate, family, and estate planning practices. Ann has developed a huge passion for conflict resolution and has a strong sense of where the mediation industry needs to go as a whole. Welcome to Earbud U, Ann.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Very good, very good. So I know I gave you a big, long introduction there, and I like to do that for our guests. But why don't you tell us and tell our listeners what is it that you do exactly?
Now there's a question for you. I can't really say that I do one thing. I do many things, all hopefully within the industry of dispute resolution and mediation. I think as many people in this industry do, they piece their business together in multiple ways, and that's very much what has happened with me. So I would say half of my time is split between running the Southern California Mediation Association, and then the other half of my time is spent in my consulting practice, which goes many directions as well.
Awesome. So let's start off with the Southern California Mediation Association. How did that organization come to be? How do they serve mediators in Southern California? Like, what do you do there?
Yeah, sure. I have been the executive director with SCMA for 3 years now. They have actually been in existence for almost a little over 27 years, and it started as a community-based nonprofit, spun out of Pepperdine and the Strauss Institute as a community-based association to kind of serve the community side of mediation. And SCMA has gone through a number of transitions throughout the years. It is a membership-based association for mediators and other dispute resolution professionals. But throughout the years, it started with community-based mediators, and then the attorney mediators came into it, and then you had judges retiring and getting into mediation. So it's gone through this like ebb and flow of being non-attorney mediators to attorney mediators to judicial mediators, and now I think it's come full circle where it now hopefully and with the people that we have involved now encompasses a number of different professionals that all have to deal with dispute resolution on some level. So now we're very much catering to anyone and everyone out there that has to manage or teach or handle any sort of conflict as either part of their job or on a professional basis as a mediator.
Okay. Now, when you talk about people who have to handle conflict, I'm in the area of working with organizations, and so for-profits, not-for-profits, any place where people get together and they're trying to accomplish a task and then they disagree. So, how do you get people? And this is, I guess, more from the professional end, but how do you get the word out from a marketing perspective about the value of mediation through your members?
I think our members speak for themselves. I think anybody that's actively engaged and involved with SCMA realizes the potential that it has to bring to their practice, regardless of whether they're full-time or not. I think we're right now actually on the cusp of bringing in these professionals that actually do other jobs, such as teachers or counselors or HR professionals. We've seen a big bump in that, as well as anybody that deals with divorces and dissolutions on any level or dealing with any kind of families in conflict. I'm starting to see that outreach is expanding. Is it where I'd like it to be? Probably never. But we are making a concerted effort, and we do that through our programs. We just had our conference last weekend at Pepperdine. We had well over 250 people, and we discussed a number of issues. And I think keeping our programs and our topics on the cutting edge of what people are dealing with, regardless of what their day-to-day practice is, I think is going to be the key to expanding and hopefully getting the knowledge base out there to people that aren't aware that this is an amazing practice available to them.
Absolutely. So one of the things that interested me in connecting with you, and we talked about this previously before this interview, but one of the things that really interested me in connecting with you was this idea of being on the cutting edge. And my personal passions in the area of technology and startups and entrepreneurship, which I think for people in all of the peacemaking fields is something that we should really be focused a lot more on, not only for intersecting with the startup community, and you have a vibrant startup community out there in California, but also sort of intersecting, allowing that community to intersect with us with some of their best practices and the ways in which they're driven towards solving some of the largest problems in the world. And just to give you an example, I know everybody sort of, I don't say writes off Facebook, but hey, Facebook is just for sharing photos. But, Facebook has a big mission. They want to be the one place where all human beings connect digitally for the rest of the century and for the rest of human civilization. That's their big, hairy idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the field of and so in the field of mediation,
mediation and conflict resolution and dispute resolution, no matter what you want to call it, resolving conflicts between human beings is a big, hairy idea. How have you gotten your members sort of connecting that big, hairy idea with and sort of developing a mentality around startups and entrepreneurship, or have you thought of that?
Yeah, it comes up with everyone that I deal with within SCMA and outside in my private practice too, because I have so many mediators that come into this practice, and how do they reach people? How do they reach clients? And in my personal opinion, this is completely a relationship-driven business, and I feel like you shouldn't eliminate any possibility of outreach. And so that's something I encourage with anybody I meet with. First identify who you are and what your practice is and what your niche is going to be. But second to that, understand that every person that you meet and that you come across is a potential client or going to lead to a potential client, because everyone has disputes. And
Right.
And it's a huge community of people on Facebook and social media. And I know it can be challenging for some people to embrace some of the technology out there and some of the platforms that they can use. But that's absolutely one of the ways that I encourage them to build their practice and to continue to promote themselves and promote this field. I think it's absolutely necessary. You see people on social media just from this past week and the devastating events that happened in Paris, and people get on there and they're talking and they're voicing their opinions, and you see conflict on there all the time. And so there's ample opportunity to interject yourself as a conflict resolution professional and hopefully engage people in conversation that there's a different approach to all of this.
Absolutely. Okay, let's dig into the nitty gritty with the marketing piece.
The marketing.
This is where my passion is.
I know.
And so let's dig into that. Why? Let's ask a core question. Let's go right to the meat of the matter. Why do so many mediators seem to shy away from marketing?
I think they're just not built that way. Mediators inherently are more empathetic people. They're more absorbing and processing, as opposed to putting themselves out there and selling themselves. I think it just becomes a different type of background and nature to your personality. I will say that the mediators that I see that are very successful in this field, it's because they're passionate, and it's because they believe in what they're doing regardless, and they don't have huge expectations. They just know that this is what they're supposed to be doing. But that doesn't necessarily make for a good business person or a good marketing person. And I think a lot of mediators do come from a legal background, so they come from a very highly structured background where they're bound by laws or bound by law firm discretions. And so going from that to your own business and your own practice and starting to market yourself in a very competitive field that I don't think everybody is aware of yet is extraordinarily challenging. And again, I think the people that are successful are the people that are engaged in the community. They're engaged in the community of mediators and the people that are working in the business of mediation. Those are the ones that I find successful. The ones I think that challenge are the ones that are sitting back, waiting for that call to come in, waiting for that case to come, and not really knowing where it's going to come from. This is a shift in mentality for mediators, especially here in LA, because in Los Angeles, we used to have a court program with LA Superior Court where mediators would sign up and they'd be able to mediate cases to the court. Well, this court program got cut about 2 years ago because of funding. And suddenly the mediators here in Southern California lost their ability to create those connections with lawyers and law firms. That is a big source of business, but it's also a highly competitive source of business. So You're going to be fighting with big firms and big mediators for business when you may be a sole practitioner, and that's challenging. And that was one of my initial challenges in this field that really frustrated me, because I kept thinking, why are you fighting for the business that people already have? Why don't you see this practice as being so much bigger than the litigated case? And so that's what I try and do with the mediators that I work with, or people that I'm working with that are trying to transition, is to kind of get them out of that litigated box and get them out of that thinking that that's the only thing that's going to give them work. I feel there's a huge amount of opportunity all across the board away from law firms and litigation that will give hopefully mediators the opportunity to get in front of people and either teach or train or mediate on an employment level. I think that possibilities are endless.
I would absolutely agree with you. But let me sort of lean in and push back a little bit
Sure.
and sort of give, the mediation field perspective. And the mediation field perspective is, well, I mean, we've weathered storms like this before. We've gone up and we've gone down. And, now maybe the court stuff is not being funded and maybe it'll go away. But, I'm an attorney mediator and only 30% of my revenue comes from, actually maybe even less than that, but let's say 30% of my revenue comes from actually doing mediated cases. I'll just go back into litigation and I'll just wait it out. Why should I market? How do you respond to sort of that sort of thinking and that sort of mentality?
If somebody is really adamant about their approach, sometimes there's just not much you can do. But at the same time, I would say that those are the people that are struggling to survive in this industry and probably won't make it. I think you have to think outside of the box. I wouldn't eliminate litigation or litigated cases. I think those relationships are important. Going to bar association meetings, connecting with lawyers anytime you can is absolutely important. I say, why have that be the only route? I think there's relationships that can be built across the board with various professionals, and you just don't know. And I encourage people to adapt to what comes up in front of them, but continue to be proactive and go out there and meet with people and talk to people. They will remember you, but you have to stay in front of them. And right. I think it says the saying is it takes 7 touches to actually create a relationship with somebody. And I believe that, and I truly believe that in this industry. And that makes it even more challenging getting outside of the litigated case and litigated matters and trying to go get a dispute before somebody goes to a lawyer, or a dispute even before it gets to that level. You have to be creative and you have to be proactive and you have to adapt, I think, to what's in front of you. And I've seen a lot of people do this and they've ended up in amazing spots and in positions, in paid positions where they're actually ADR consultants on bigger levels. And so it is possible. And there are positions out there, and I think companies are growing and they're realizing we are tired of being firefighters. We need to be proactive and start avoiding some of these disputes, because by the time it gets to the end of the day, it's layer upon layer upon layer, and you get back to the beginning and you're like, wow, why didn't we handle this at the beginning? Why are we at the end?
And I'm sure you're familiar with the work of Colin Rule and Modria.com and his work, formerly working with the dispute system and developing that system for eBay and PayPal and those folks. And so, I look at the ability for mediation to be offered as a customer service, not just to internal players inside of organizations like employees to employees, but also as an employee to customer offer that could potentially, reduce litigation. But many organizations, you're right, don't know what mediation is, and mediators sometimes struggle with how to define their own value proposition. Absolutely.
And there is so much value. I mean, I I'm so fortunate because I get to, learn from some amazing people pretty much on a monthly basis, but I also get to work with people that are really excited and anxious and want to break through. And as a collaborative group, I think the more people we can bring together in this industry, I think the better for all of us. And I think it's relatively young when you think about mediation and conflict resolution. It's really, no older than I think 30 years old. It's in the grand scheme of things, we're kind of in our toddler stage. But we're also growing, and I feel like I'm seeing a change. It's certainly not as fast as I would like it to be, but I'm seeing it, and I think that what I'm able to do with SCMA and the platform there is wonderful, because I'm able to, offer hopefully progressive programs and training to get people kind of out of the box and start them looking at different things that are related to world events today and challenges in companies today. And help them kind of create that model for themselves, because if they can do that and be passionate about it, then you don't really have to sell.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Well, and that's, I guess, the idea of, marketing without feeling. And I liked how you talked about people who are mediators tend to be, or people who are drawn to the field tend to be empathetic and tend to be involved in process versus maybe, or tend to come from a highly structured legal background versus people who tend to be drawn towards marketing or maybe even sales, who tend to be a little more extroverted and creative, let's say.
Yeah, definitely.
And not just creative with their process and approach, but sometimes creative with the truth, which which gets us to sort of this idea of business development and entrepreneurialism. And so why don't you talked about your private consulting and what you do in this space. How did you get into that space? Like, how did that happen for you?
I still look back and I'm still baffled how I got from point A to point B, which I still don't, I've got so much work to do. Ultimately, what's driven me is the passion for this industry, and wanting to promote conflict resolution as a whole, coming from huge family of conflict myself, and then working in litigation myself for a number of years. I found my niche. I found what I'm supposed to do, and I feel very fortunate. It's not something I'm going to be willing to give up, but I felt frustrated by my own lack of movement as fast as I would like it to be. And so working with SCMA and working with other mediators, I'm like, wait, this is the answer. The more people we bring together as a collaborative community, the better off we're going to be. Comparing entrepreneurship with startup, it's a little bit different. It's strange with this field because there's also mediators out here for years that have been providing these services for free. And It's a huge conflict within our industry because there's many mediators out there that want to make money and they want to survive doing this business, but they're so used to giving away their services, and making that transition from being a volunteer mediator into being a paid mediator is probably the hardest transition you'll have in this field, I think. But I think once you start to understand and recognize your own value, and for me, it was that understanding that I had value, that it wasn't common, and then also leaving myself open to the change, leaving myself open to the needs of people. So rather than trying to make clients or customers or mediators fit into what I thought was right, I've kind of approached my business from the standpoint, well, let's just see how things come in, and whatever the problem, I am an inherent problem solver. And so to me, the problems come to me, and they come to me in all different forms and fashions. And I adapt to that problem, and hopefully can either myself help resolve it, or bring somebody in, or put together a team of people, whether it be a facilitation, whether it be a formal mediation, or an actual training. I can then hopefully put together the people that are needed to resolve that issue. And that's how I've approached my business. Could we all make more money? Yes, we could. And it's mind-boggling to think of all the disputes and all the people out there that don't have these skill sets that need it. And so to me, it's an endless supply. It's all a matter of outreach, and all a matter of us as a community coming together and promoting not only ourselves, but each other, not being competitive, because I found the people that collaboratively work together, one person may work family law, one person may work international disputes, another person may do employment. So you're not going to take everything that comes to you. There are mediators out there that do that, and they have the skill set to obviously mediate any type of dispute. But people find that they gravitate towards certain areas of practice that they like and they become passionate about. And so as a community, I see cases being passed around all the time with each other, which is wonderful. And I think some mediators underestimate how important that collaboration is. I don't think they realize they can get business from their fellow mediators. And so that's, I think, a common misconception too. And then also just bringing people together, making sure you're present, making sure you're active, going to these programs, going to meetings, getting involved with other community associations. Again, I truly believe From a collaborative perspective and from a sales and marketing perspective, it's a relationship driven business. So
Correct.
you have to connect with people. You just do. And if you're not good at that, then you may find another way to build a business in this practice. But if you're starting out, I think that's absolutely necessary.
Now, I love what you said about, you said so much good stuff there. So let's tear apart some of that. It was great stuff. And I honestly, philosophically, it matches the way I've built, Earbud Youth's parent company, Human Services Consulting and Training, and sort of all the silos of things that we do here. But let's walk backward through that. Okay, so you talked about mediators who have to collaborate and share, and one of the things that I discovered early on in my business development was how few mediators, and I'm just talking about mediators, not necessarily peace builders, but how few mediators actually sort of collaborate together, even though we ask parties across the table to collaborate with each other. We don't collaborate with each other in our own business development. And part of that is, I think, goes back to this idea of the no button. And the no button basically says, no, I'm not going to take everything, even though I desperately need it because my checking account is down to X amount below red or whatever, And so I'm not going to take that. Instead, I'm going to kick that off to somebody that I know, and maybe that, for lack of a better term, referral or good karma will come back to me, and I'll get a referral from them.
Sure.
And the cycle that cycle continues. So it's a lack of a no button is what I see a lot of. And then the other piece is, being in Los Angeles and being close to the startup and the collaborative culture of that state overall. Do you see it as being? And I guess this is my bigger question. Do you see sort of the functionality of collaboration as you've built your business and as you've worked with other mediators to build their businesses? Do you see that as a product of the environment you're in California? Like, could you pick that up and go to Arkansas and do the same thing?
I think it would depend on how many people are actually practicing mediation in Arkansas as opposed to how many people are here practicing. This is what I do on a day-to-day basis. I live and breathe to bring these people together and try and make this a better industry and try and make it more marketable for them, and hopefully allow people to create a profession for themselves where they can sustain themselves and survive and do this full time. I'm fortunate because I get to work with SCMA and I get to work with a board of directors of people that come from all different backgrounds, whose concerted effort is to do the same thing. So I feel I've been given an opportunity with this position, and I feel really fortunate and lucky to have it because it then has become a platform for, okay, we're a smaller group of people here, but let's get together and figure out how can we make this better? How can we get people working? Right. How can we keep them trained, keep them professional, keep them ethical? All of those things, because it is an industry that isn't necessarily managed. And then also protecting the confidentiality aspect of it, which constantly gets attacked here and there on the litigated side. But keeping that group of people together, and hopefully, we have 15 board members, and hopefully one of those board members knows 5, 10, 15, 20 mediators, and so on and so on. I find the challenges are more with the longer term mediators that have been doing this for a long time in a very conservative and traditional sense. They've either been a community mediator or been a litigated mediator, one or the other. And for the longer term professionals in this industry, that I found that those are the most challenging ones to kind of grasp and accept that things are changing. With the younger group of people coming in, it's exciting because they actually do see it a little bit differently, and they see that there's opportunities out there, and they see that there is a potential for growth that is really unending. And those are the people that I try and kind of keep engaged and involved in. Our SCMA has a mentorship program, and the people coming through the mentorship program, and it's funny, I say young, but that doesn't mean age-wise. I want to point that out because I'm not talking about students coming out of college. I'm talking about people that have been professionals in a certain industry for a long time and have discovered this through maybe some training program or whatever it may be, or maybe they went through a process themselves and they found an interest in it. And so our mentorship program We get we accept 5 or 6 people twice a year into this program. We get a number of applications, but the age range can be from 20 to 60. So when I say young mediator, it doesn't necessarily mean young by age. And it's people coming from various backgrounds and with multiple degrees and multiple professions. And so you're kind of seeing this now progress. I am seeing anyways, a progressive move to broaden and expand this field, hopefully. And as we all continue to talk and have conversations like you and I are having today, hopefully we can continue to push this practice forward.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that you talked about is and you keep going back to this, and I love it that you keep going back to this, is the relationship piece. So from mentoring all the way to what you do at SCMA, through the mentorship program and that process, through the work that you do in the private consulting space, the private consulting space, and building your practice and really letting other people know that we're going to collaborate and we're going to build relationships. Let's switch a little bit and talk about tools for collaboration. Okay. Biggest tool for collaboration, and we're seeing this in the wake of terrorist attacks and natural disasters and things like that. Biggest tool is social media.
Sure.
And yet, and I'm not talking specific platforms now. I'm just talking about social media broadly in general. As a whole. Now, with that, obviously, there's fracturing of attention spans and things like that. But the ability to connect socially with somebody, to share an idea, whether they're a family member or a stranger thousands of miles away, is one of the most amazing pieces of human communication development that has happened probably since Gutenberg, created the printing press.
Right.
And we sort of underestimate how amazing this actually is because we're all living through it right now.
Sure.
My passion is in the digital space, and that's where I'm building my connections and my collaborations. I mean, you're being interviewed on a podcast. This is and we're using digital tools to talk to each other, and we're using digital tools to collaborate. And collaboration is built into more and more digital tools as they are developed in different parts of Silicon Valley. How do mediators get on board with the new digital tools? Is that a part of your mentoring process?
It is. It's our very first meeting.
That?
we have, I believe, 4 group sessions with all of the mediators. And obviously they all come in from different backgrounds and with different ideas of what they want and some of them come into the mentorship program and have no idea. So we put in a framework for sure and talk about various sources out there and options. I tell them, look at it like this. You're planting seeds. So you create a LinkedIn, you've planted a seed. You've created a Facebook page, you're planting a seed. We look at their websites if they have them. If they don't, we help them develop their websites, help them identify groups, whether socially or business, professional wise, that they can connect with. Go to those meetings, get some business cards, make sure you connect. I think that it's important to understand no matter how you're communicating, it's as important as anything else. And so, and that's been my approach. I mean, it's somewhat organic and you never know. A lot of people will write it off, but I say, why write anything off? You don't know. You may post something and a year later, someone may see it and it may bring an opportunity to you. So don't eliminate anything. And then the other fear we kind of come across in addition to the social media is, okay, well, what if somebody calls me and I don't know what to do?
Right.
And inherently, if you've been professionally trained as a mediator, you should know what to do. And the key skill there is going to be listening to the person you're connected with, however it be, whether it's through social media, email, phone call, in person, listening to what that person is saying to you, identifying what their problem or need is, and figuring it out. And if you can't, hey, guess what? You've just now become part of a great community, such as the Southern California Mediation Association. And you can connect to a group of people. And if you don't know that's why you have these people that you can collaborate with, you shouldn't ever say no, I say. And I would never tell anybody no. I might say, you know what? I don't have an answer for you right this second, but you know what? I will absolutely get back to you, and I will
Right.
get something to you to work with. And that's what I try to get across to all my mediators. Don't say no. And if you're not sure, just tell them you get back to them. And don't say no to social media. Don't say no to any form of marketing, advertising, or business development. I say put your hand in as many pots as possible if you're at that stage of really trying to grow and establish and move forward. That's necessary. And the people that don't do all of that are the ones that are not really working, unfortunately.
Right. Well, let's talk about, because we sort of circled around it, and I found in my business practice going out and talking to not only other mediators but talking to anybody who's built a business in any kind of silo. I don't care whether it's
It's
dealing with
challenging.
it's challenging. I don't care whether you're dealing with human problems or whether you're dealing with some of the hardest technical challenges of our time, or whether you're dealing with money, or whether you're digging a ditch.
Sure.
I don't care what you're building. The number one thing that people have to get past, and we've sort of circled around it, but I want to nail it directly in the core, and I want you to talk about it, is fear.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great book by Stephen Pressfield. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called The War of Art.
Yeah.
And it's about, from a writer's perspective and from a creative's perspective, what defeats a creative? Well, the thing that defeats a creative is fear, the fear of the white paper, or the fear of putting something out there in the world and it being rejected, the fear of not starting, the fear of starting too soon, the fear of starting too late. And as mediators, we see fear at the table all the time between two parties who can't come to resolution, or forget even resolution, can't just come to engagement.
Right.
But we have fear in our own business practices and our own business development. How do you help your young mediators coming into the field? How do you guide them through the fear?
I think it's perception. I think perception and passion. I think you gotta get them to step out of the box, because once they're engaged in their fear of whatever, they're no longer neutral. But wait,
Right.
You've been trained as a neutral. So you actually have this ability to step back and wait a second, let me think about this. And is this a valid fear? And you know what? The other thing I say is you are going to fail. You are going to get rejected, and you are going to hit bumps. Those are the things that make you learn and make you better, and better at business, and better at moving forward. It's certainly not an easy path. And especially if you're coming out of a 9-to-5 position where somebody's been paying you a nice salary and some nice benefits, and now all of a sudden you're out here trying to promote yourself individually or with a group. It can be very, very, very challenging, but it also, I say, is extraordinarily rewarding. And I think it's understanding that it's not all going to come at one time, and it's going to be an ebb and flow, and you'll have one good month and you'll have one bad month, and it's okay. That's anybody that's in any kind of a business, whether it's startup or an entrepreneur, they're going to deal with those exact same issues. And it's, I think, as an individual, keeping yourself neutral with that skill set, and maybe you let it bother you for a moment, but process it and get over it and move on to the next thing, and keep your eye on the goal. It is hard, and you have to adapt, and you have to be a wave rider, I say, in order to do any business, but in particular with this business. But you have that skill set. If you've been trained and you've been trained properly, then my gosh, you already have all the tools you need to survive in a business.
Okay, let's talk about training then for just a second.
Yeah.
There's almost an overemphasis on training in the mediation field.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really mean I don't mean the kind of training that you're offering or that you're talking about. I actually think there's an underemphasis of that sort of training.
Mm-hmm.
But everywhere I look around, I see another 40-hour certification training.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've got people who are coming into 40-hour certification training programs. And one of my guests on Earbud U last season, Elizabeth Clements, she runs a year-long process and basically advocates for there being more training that's more in-depth and transformational for mediators. And she also is, she developed her own business and is developing her own business practice, and is really, working with that idea through the Association of Conflict Resolution of Greater New York and some other organizations that she's a member of.
ACR, yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So Is it that there's an overabundance of training, or is
No.
it that there's an underabundance of training? And I'm not trying to get you in an argument with Elizabeth. I'm just asking the
Oh, no,
question.
no, no. I would actually agree with that. I think you can't have enough. I'm sorry. I
Right.
mean,
Okay.
yes, maybe there's too many 40-hour certification programs. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think there can ever be too much.
Hmm.
I think anything that gives people the skill set further, it will expand this industry. So I'm never going to be against training. I would say don't just do one and stop at that.
Right.
That's a problem because this industry is changing, and it's going to continue to change. And if you want to be able to handle some of the issues that are going to come up in front of you, such as race, such as family disputes, elder care, all the things of the baby boomer issues that are going to be coming up, the international issues. There's an endless supply of disputes out there. But if
Oh yeah.
you want to be trained enough to be able to get in there and adapt and make some movement, then you have to keep up on training. Period.
Hmm.
The end. And I will advocate training. And I think personally, people should allot 40 to 60 hours a year to training and just keep doing it. Keep continuing to educate themselves and stay on the cutting edge, because there are people out there that are doing amazing things, like Ken Cloak, who was
Hmm.
one of our keynotes last weekend. Um, he did a presentation on socioeconomical impacts, political impacts, climate impacts on dispute resolution, and how we all can find a role.
Hmm.
And the only way we can do that is to keep training and to keep talking and keep engaging. So I think training is necessary, and I think it should be continued as much as possible, because then that will hopefully keep you up to speed on what's working and what's not working.
Hmm. Now, I look at the internet, and obviously, there's a huge wash of information there. Some of it good, some of it bad. And in my own business development, I've gone to a lot of online trainings and webinars and things like that. And I agree with the 40 to 60 hours a year of training, but it's got to be training focused on whatever area you want to grow in. And do you see mediators tending to focus on more of the, like I said, the empathetic skills development versus sort of the hard business skills development, or do you see sort of an overlap
I
between
see
the two?
both. I mean,
Okay.
there's a need in both for sure. I am seeing a little bit of a transition, and people really wanting to understand socioeconomic issues and political issues, just in light of everything going on, the conflicts with police, the conflicts within the world. So these are peacekeepers at the end of the day, and they do want to make a difference, and they are still trying to navigate how do they get from point A to point B. And there are organizations out there that will help you do that kind of work for sure. Um,
Absolutely.
so I think both. Another hot topic I think is emotional intelligence, because
Yep.
in our practice it tends to be lawyers that transition over into mediation, and
Right.
lawyers are just not built to be emotionally intelligent. They're just not, and it's nothing personal. It's just that's if they've gone through the schooling and they've practiced any sort of law, that's just not inherently how they're built. And I think it's important that, regardless of who you are coming into this practice, that's something that you have to keep your finger on top of, is the emotional intelligence, because I think it is very important to the practice of mediation as well.
Absolutely. Well, clearly you're passionate about mediation and about
Yeah.
getting the skill sets to mediators to help them succeed in a very rapidly changing world. But what keeps Ann Sawyer going? What keeps you going after doing this work for all these years? How do you refill your own tank?
Gosh, you know what? I get so much back from the people that I work with. I can't even tell you. It can be frustrating. Don't get me wrong. I definitely run into issues that can be extraordinarily challenging. But if I see a mediator that 4 years ago I met and was just coming into this industry, and now they're working full-time practice in this field, I've done my job. that's one person, and I'm okay with that. I know that, I may only accomplish 3 or 4 goals in a year, but if I am able to do that, then that's rewarding enough for me. Obviously, within my friends and family, and spending that time is a good downtime too, because you do have to take the downtime. For me, it can be endless, and because I'm so passionate about it, I don't really think about the toll on my private time. But I've gotten much better at it now, and I've learned to kind of have my boundaries of my phone is off and my phone is on. I tend to be as reachable as possible. I like to get back to people right away, and I like them to know that I'm there for them. And I do spend a lot of time, almost on a daily basis, with people, helping them in one direction or another in this practice. And so that for me is extraordinarily rewarding, and enough to keep me going.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Anne, for coming on the Earbud U podcast. We appreciate having you on today. This was a great interview, and I took a ton of notes while you were talking, and there's a lot of wide-ranging different areas we could dive into, and we'll definitely have you back in the arena here in a little bit. But why don't you tell us, and we're going to have links to the Southern California Mediation Association in the show notes. We're going to have links to Anne Sawyer's LinkedIn profile and all the different ways that you can get connected to her. And we didn't really talk about Mediate to Resolve either. We didn't get a chance to talk about that.
But we did. Essentially, Mediate to Resolve is turned into a consulting practice. It started out as helping mediators with their case administration and developing their business and getting them connected to cases, and it's kind of grown from there. It continues to grow, and I'm adapting to the needs of what's out there, and so that's amazing. With SCMA, you have this collaborative community, and I just want to leave it on the note that because we're called the Southern California Mediation Association, that doesn't mean that there isn't a benefit to you. It was started here, and we are based in Southern California. However, we have professionals who are members who are across the United States, and my goal would be to get all of these professionals together, no matter where they're located, and find a way to benefit them. We have a listserv, so people that join SCMA can be a part of our listserv, which is also an amazing tool to communicate with mediators, whether exchanging information or legal issues or passing a case around, whatever it may be. It's a confined membership community specifically geared towards mediators, regardless of where you're located. So with SCMA, I encourage anyone and everyone out there just to go onto their website and take a look at it, because that's a big part of what I do, and a big part of the group that works with it. In fact, our current outgoing president is actually located in New York. So we do have people everywhere, and my goal is to continue to expand that outreach. I think the more we come together as a group, the bigger our voice will be, and the more people will hear that this is an option for them.
This is an option for them. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I was going to ask you, what would you like to promote today, if
that's
anything? But that's it. And like I said, we're definitely going to have those links in the show notes below the player. But thank you very much for coming on Earbud U. And and we look forward to having you on again.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.